I have seen many people say that this has been the worst NBA playoffs of all time. And I don't blame a single person that thinks that because I have found the NBA playoffs extremely boring. There's been to me maybe three good NBA playoff games throughout these entire playoffs. In fact, the two best, in my opinion, have both been game ones. Game one between the Nets and Celtics, and game one between the Warriors and the Grizzlies. Other than that, it has felt like every other playoff game has been decided by at least 15, 20, 25, 30 points. I know that's not the case at all, but that is what it has felt like. Could a good NBA Finals make us forget how bad these playoffs have been? I doubt it. Is it going to be the best NBA Finals of all time? No chance. Absolutely not. But as long as we have a finals where all the games, or at least most of the games, are decided by single digits, I think a lot of people are going to take satisfaction in that because it's going to be a lot different than what we have seen throughout the playoffs. Now, just by looking at these two teams, just on paper, I think we're in for a good NBA Finals. I think both of these teams, they match up to each other quite well as far as depth. Although I would argue that maybe Boston has a little bit better depth. But let's get to the NBA Finals prediction. Representing the Eastern Conference, we have the Boston Celtics, a team that many people, including myself, they kind of rode off towards the middle of the season as they found themselves in 11th place in the Eastern Conference standings, and then they rallied all the way to get to second in the Eastern Conference. And I do want to keep in mind that on the final day of the regular season, the Bucks found themselves as the 2 seed, but they intentionally lost the game because they wanted to avoid potentially facing off against the Nets in the first round of the playoffs. So they benched Giannis, they benched Drew Holiday, they benched Middleton, they benched everyone. But the Celtics, they were fine. They embraced the challenge of facing off against the Nets in round one. They were honored and thankful to play the Nets in the first round of the playoffs. The entire playoff run for this Celtics team has been full of bravery and courage as they had the guts to take on the Nets in round one. And they swept the Nets. And then they took down the Bucks, the defending champions, in 7 games. They took down the Heat in 7 games in the Eastern Conference Finals. The Heat were the number 1 seeded team in the Eastern Conference. So the Celtics, they have dominated everyone they've played, as has the Warriors, representing the Western Conference, as I mentioned a moment ago, the Golden State Warriors. A team that was one of the favorites. And for me, the favorite to win the NBA Finals at the beginning of the year, as we knew that the Splash Brothers would be reunited. The question was, when will Klay Thompson come back? And it turns out he came back in January. But the Warriors, they did have to overcome some injuries throughout the year, as despite the Warriors making quick work of everybody they faced in these playoffs, they made quick work of the 2-time reigning league MVP Nikola Jokic and the Nuggets in 5 games. They took care of business against the Grizzlies in 6 games. I probably shouldn't have said the Grizzlies were quick work, but because they weren't. But Ja Morant missed a big portion of the year for the Grizzlies, and they did well without him. And they made quick work against Luka and the Mavs in 5 games in the Western Conference Finals. The Warriors still found themselves in 3rd place in the Western Conference, as Klay Thompson didn't come back till January, as I mentioned already. Steph Curry to miss some time with injuries. And I have said throughout the year that as long as the Warriors are healthy come playoff time, nobody is going to be able to beat them. And so far, that has been the case. The Celtics are in their first NBA Finals since 2010, also known as the Big Three era. And now they have a nice 1-2 punch, a lethal 1-2 punch in Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Marcus Smart has stepped up for the Celtics throughout this playoff run. I'm happy to see Al Horford finally make an NBA Finals. He is one of those players that I feel like deserves a championship. For the Warriors, they come into the finals with experience, as this is going to be their 6th NBA Finals in the last 8 years. We have seen Jordan Poole develop into a star for Golden State, as he has had his moments throughout the year. Andrew Wiggins has turned out to be a good fit for the Warriors. Even Kevon Looney had his moment in Game 2 of the Western Conference Finals by putting up 21 points. Now, I want to ultimately get to my prediction here. Game 1, I think the Warriors win that one. Game 2, I think Boston will win that one. So we go to Game 3 in Boston, tied up 1 apiece. Then I think the Celtics will win Game 3. Game 4, I think, will go to the Warriors. Game 5, I think the Warriors win that as well. And Game 6, we know that Game 6 Clay is going to show up. So I think the Warriors win the finals in 6 games. And I think Steph Curry is going to finally get his NBA Finals MVP. Even though I think many people will argue that maybe Klay Thompson deserves it. But if the Celtics win the NBA Finals, we all know it's going to be Jason Tatum that wins the Finals MVP. There's no question about it. Because the Celtics are going to win the Finals, Jason Tatum is going to have to step up in every single game. And I also do want to point out that the difference in this series for me is going to be, one, Golden State's experience compared to the Celtics, as there is not one player on the Celtics roster that has NBA Finals experience. But who does have NBA Finals experience? Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green. And I also pointed out early on that I mentioned that as long as the Warriors are healthy at playoff time, nobody's going to be able to beat them. And I think that's the case. I don't want to take away anything the Boston Celtics did throughout this playoff run, but I think there is no way they would have beaten the Heat if the Heat were healthy throughout the series. As there was no way Jimmy Butler was at 100%. There was no way that Kyle Lowry was at 100%. Tyler Hero missed games. He missed 3 games, I believe, with a groin injury. So if the Heat were healthy, I think there's no doubt that they would have won the series. And now the Celtics, they take on a healthy Golden State team. And that's ultimately why I feel like the Warriors win this in 6 games.